So next session is FIDO Primary and how to get there in U.S. government. The speaker this session is Lisa Palma from LC&J Security Solutions. Please welcome her.
Ooh, it's bright up here. So good afternoon. I know it's 5 o'clock and our brains are really packed from this two-day event that's going on. So I'll try to get through the slides quickly so we can kind of open up for discussion. My name is Lisa Palma. I've been in identity management, giving away my age, 2+ decades. I'm originally from New Jersey, moved to Arlington to stand up DoD PKI and deploy the Common Access Card. Had a chance to do that again in the federal government to stand up federal PKI and deploy the PIV. And I'm excited to be here today to be able to share that experience and to be able to do this with FIDO. As we see, we all know 24 years ago, pretty much, we have HSPD 12 that came out that mandated that we public key enable everything. We have strong adjudication of identities to be able to get a PIV card in the federal government as an employee, as an institutional contractor. We public key enabled all our systems and applications to do smart card logon, certificate-based enforcement. And then here we are 20-something years later with the executive order that, we're moving into cloud. We don't have, we have some challenges with cloud doing certificate-based enforcement, other kinds of technologies, and identity proofing other users outside of the federal employee and contractor use cases, which brings us right into the segue for the challenge of where we are today. So we're moving into zero trust, where we trust nobody. We want to have conditional access controls to follow devices and identities, human and device identities around, make sure they're credentialed properly. Well, how do we do this? We have an infrastructure that's just built for two types of use cases, federal and institutional contractors. Some of the objectives of where we are for zero trust. We want to look at the next step. As it was mentioned several times today that the FIDO Alliance released a paper for the US government to adopt FIDO, to start to adopting FIDO. I know we're a little bit ahead of the game with what we're doing next, but we have to think about what is the infrastructure? Can we leverage what we have from a PIV infrastructure? Look at the use cases we have. We have an interim user. OPM credentialing standards does state you can issue a temporary PIV card to an interim user. Some agencies don't have the manpower to do that and then retrack if a user doesn't complete adjudication or all these other kind of processes that go in place, so a user sits there for 3 months with the password till they finally get a PIV. Deprecation of outdated multi-factor authentication. We're mandated for phishing resistant. Well, how do we get an external user something phishing resistant? A PIV card. They can't go through the background check as extensively as we do. Overseas population, country laws get in the way. So we have some use cases on the screen that I'm sure everybody is aware of, but these are the objectives that we're trying to talk to the government about to get them to really adopt FIDO and look at how can we credential users securely and be able to secure our infrastructure. As I'm kind of going fast through the slides, but basically what I said is still, it follows up on this slide. So we have some things to think about. We hear a lot about NIST 857.1 being updated, which is absolutely great for agencies with a different type of infrastructure that might not have some of the components that need to be there to do another type of primary credential. But we want to, and this is from my perspective, as well as some colleagues, is we don't want to hinder FIDO's capabilities to just a derived credential. It doesn't remove the PIV challenges we have with external users, interim users, other different types of things. People don't have a PIV card. the traveling, remote activation, these kind of PIV challenges that make the agencies go back to a password or a one-time password or some kind of deprecated type of MFA, non-phishing. So these are some bullets that we want to look at. If we want to bring in, of course, you have to identity proof. We have a lot of FIDO platforms, a lot of technology out here. We want to look at, how do we check the box to be able to give somebody a FIDO credential as a primary credential? Of course, they still always have a PIV card. That is, your adjudication and things like that. Can we leverage that adjudication and give them, let them get their PIV card, but also then give them a FIDO token for primary authentication? We have some things going on to support all of this executive order and the FIDO adoption. I think you all heard Ken Myers from GSA has been up here talking about community of action, working with O&B to get some of these things updated, to be able to work with the federal agencies to do FIDO pilots. Life cycle management would be the next phase, next step to go into, to be able to issue FIDO outside of just arrived, and meeting all your FIPS and NIST standards. Again, the FIDO Alliance released the U.S. government adoption paper for FIDO today. It's really a good paper. If you haven't read it yet, please do. And then we have our FSMA approved. Okay, so so the NIST update for FIDO. So that's, we had Ryan here, he was talking about all kind of updates going into NIST 863 for alternative phishing resistant authenticators. Again, this really goes into how do we do the life cycle management, the next step of FIDO. How do I take some of the PIV infrastructure or put aside by infrastructure to bring on a user, temporary user, an overseas employee, external user, even a contractor that can't travel right? What are those check boxes that I put in? Where are some of the policies that need to be updates to be able to say, okay, here is your FIDO credential. You will have your PIV, obviously logical access, physical access, things of that nature, but also here is your FIDO credential that you can register and you can authenticate in compliantly with a phishing resistant credential. We hope that there are some next steps that go into play to be able to have some more community working groups to be able to get some ideas. Identity proofing is one big one. I mean, we have a pilot going on at local post offices where people could go in instead of traveling back all the way to an agency because majority of people are remote now. But we need more than that. We need more. We have verifiable credentials coming into play. Let's get together and leverage that. This kind of briefing is a little bit premature, but it's really to get you to start thinking about how can we get to the next level. And how can we get it into the government to be able to be adopted and accepted as, a PIV credential? It's not PIV. There'll be a separate policy written for it, but to be able to be issued in that manner. I know that was a lot to take in, but I really wanted this to be a discussion because it's good to get feedback so that we understand, what are people thinking and what can we do as a next step. So with that said, I will go to Q&A. If there's any questions.
Okay, there you go. So we don't have any question online just
Okay.
yet, so maybe open it up to the floor. Okay, there you go.
Hi, great presentation. I was just curious, a lot of PIV credentials are also used for physical access. And does this take into account any of that combination physical with the FIDO part?
Now that really hasn't been discussed. I mean, the PIV card, this is never to, and it says it in the FIDO adoption paper, it's not to replace the PIV or the CAT card. It's to issue FIDO where we don't have to have it as derived, right? For a derived credential, you'll have to have a PIV to do a CRL check to validate, to derive the trust that you got to be issued a PIV card. How can we create that trust and put that in place where we could issue a PIV for physical access, a badge? This is Lisa, I'm a contractor. This is Joe, he's federal, you know, that all those specifications stay in place, but yet I have another mechanism that I don't have to have the PIV to do a technology check to get another form of a credential. I may have to be cleared to have a PIV card to get a FIDO credential, but I don't have to depend on that CRL check to be able to be issued one.
Hey, so it sounds like some of the challenges today are around use cases where PIV doesn't apply. You don't have a PIV card to actually get FIDO 2. And identity proofing without that PIV card is some of the problem. What can some of the private industry do today to help alleviate this challenge for government?
Yes, very good question. So I'm personally out there saying, okay, we have these really good identity proofing products. They're doing IAL2. How can they get to IAL3? How does that get combined into with a FIDO infrastructure, if you will? So now that I'm Lisa and I have been registered and identity proofed, I now have a credential management system where I'm registering my FIDO token. And it's basically building what you have from a PIV perspective, right? You have your enrollment office, you have your forms, your in-person identity proofing, then you go to another office where it's actually, you know, PKI, and you get issued a printed out a badge with a cert on it. Well, I think that's the whole key here. We have these sophisticated products coming in now. We have some of the policies being updated. How do we put those things together to create a FIDO architecture to be able to follow the compliance and do, like you said, and then at the end of the day, have that token credential in your hand to be able to use, and then later in certain other use cases, get to your passkey and things of that nature.
Hi, Lisa. I'm Juan Jun with Interseed. Thank you for the presentation. I do agree about identity proofing. There's a need for identity proofing, especially if you're issuing straight up FIDO credentials, and not as a derived, but just straight FIDO credential. And you mentioned the U.S. Postal Service doing some kind of pilot or pilots being done there. What kind of identity proofing are they doing there? Just curious.
There's a pilot that GSA started. It was started a while back. It stopped. It started again after the pandemic. So because everybody became remote, they have like enrollment stations at certain local post offices so that you can go there. It's just like if you went to your agency and you gave them your I-9 documentation. They have a station at a local post office that can capture that, and then obviously it goes into like the managed service offering, solution, and then it's kind of like that shared service, and then you could go to some other location that's a shared service that you could say, I got this ticket, I've been proved, now print me out my PIV card. Well, that's wonderful. What about departments that don't have that, right? That don't do shared service, that have the Treasury Department, have their own PKIs, their own, it's a different a data set, Something like that might work for Department of Defense because they're centralized, they're DMDC, but again, so a lot of people say, well, we can leverage what's been done for PIV, but we have products, we have sophisticated technology now, verifiable credentials, right? So, and then with zero trust on top of that, I have this phishing resistant credential, I can get to XYZ, I cannot get to ABC, so we even have that now on top of it. So that's kind of what we're looking to put together.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So, okay, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. Maybe closing thoughts?
Yes, closing thoughts is I know we'll get there. I don't know how long it will take, but I know that we'll get there because we need something more to be able to secure other users, not roll back to deprecated multi-factor authentication, and and collaboration is probably the best way to get started. So thank you very much, and I'll see you later.